Good morning, everyone. Tom Kaczynski here. Today's date is the 15th of November. It is a little after 8 a.m. in the morning. Coming to you from the car today. Dana had a procedure she's getting done, so prayers are always welcome for that. But standard procedure, but left me here with time to kill. So sitting here in the hospital parking lot, it's about 25 degrees out, and my car makes way too much noise if I turn it on. So we're here this morning. Just talk for about 20 minutes like I like to do from time to time. And if you like what you're listening to, go check out the books on Amazon, the Venmo, CVC, PRV, and I will put it in the description because my wife tells me I should put it in the description because she says I talk too fast. But you guys like drinking from the fire hose, otherwise you wouldn't be here, or you accidentally got sent here. I know the algorithm didn't do it, so you probably have interesting friends if you're watching this channel. Wanted to talk about a couple different disconnected issues, just stuff I noticed. Xi's trip to San Francisco. A lot of people don't know the Chinese economy has its own problems. They have the same issues we have. The young don't give a damn because they have no say in their society. Even worse over there, if you can imagine that. And we have the issue where their economy never really picked back up properly after COVID. Although they are obviously trading a lot of goods with the Middle East and with Russia increasingly to try to build markets as well as their domestic market. Nonetheless, as much as China has problems, the bigger problem that I've been seeing is how San Francisco is handling the visit of China. You see Gavin Newsom over there basically going to kowtow the moment he comes off the plane, and they have China all decked in red and yellow. And no, the 49ers didn't win the Super Bowl. We're dealing with a situation where they've basically China-fied downtown San Francisco. And it's really interesting and I suppose really telling the hypocrisy of these times. You know, it's like the other day I was reading an article that I was looking at. I can't remember exactly where I read it. I think it was in one of those big ones, like New York Times or something. It's like they had these two prominent Israelis saying that, you know, the people in the West should take all these people from Gaza. And in another column, it's like people in Gaza are terrorists. So why do you get to dump your problems on us? Why is America the dumping ground of the world? Are we the economic refuse dump of the world? I guess that's what we must be. We're America's junkyard, all the parts that are left over, and the people are treated the same way. You, me, all of us. We're an afterthought. Because that's how it's been for a long time. Oh, we don't want to invest in economic or in the education. Let's just steal what other countries pay to educate their people and leave our own people to rot without health care, without support, all the various things we suffer under. And you could say, oh, I don't want any of that. Well, the thing is, what sucks most is we get all the bad side and none of the upside. We never get the upside. We never get the credit. We always get the blame. And you know this. This is nothing new to you. But it's interesting in San Francisco to see what a government that actually gave a damn could do, because they cleaned it up real quick. And when they asked about, Gavin Newsom says, well, we did it because we did. I mean, yeah, so they could have. And it just proved that they hate you. And they want you to know that they hate you. That's another important thing. It's a dominance gesture. You know, it's just like, yeah, I beat you. So what are you going to do about it? We're going to go sick some of our friends on you, you know, the increasingly politicized law enforcement. I feel bad. I know a lot of old timers who really put their time in and who weren't like this. Things got funny in the last 10, 15 years. And there's no talking past all of that. But at least with Xi in the country, I would predict until he leaves this country, the odds of World War III breaking out are relatively low. So if you were going to go out and do some shopping, escape from your bunker for a few minutes, today might not be a bad day to do it. Next few days, I think they're supposed to be scheduled here from like the 12th to the 17th. Although who knows what's actually being negotiated in these contracts. There's also a ceasefire for the moment in Gaza, although I don't think that will hold. They've been doing kind of a crash course of reading on some different things. This is actually what I should be reading, but it's early, so I'm lazy. Empire of the Mind, A History of Iran. You know, Iran's interesting. Iran is a brother country. We don't think of it that way because they're on the Muslim side, but when you look at things through the lens of ethnic identification, which you can do through linguistics here, the Persians are really a European people who kind of got lost along the way. And it's an interesting thing. Even the language, you know, a lot of the native roots of the words are the same. But once again, you have a small tribal minority who has overwhelming control of the papers, convincing these brother wars to happen, which is what a war with Iran would be. I mean, and it's easy to hide that and put it as a civilizational war against different religions. And once upon a time, we might have believed that. But considering how many times we've seen Christians set against Christians, or, you know, Muslims manipulated against each other by these same people, you really have to point to the obvious as the trick that's happening here. And that is that you have these Zionist issues out there. And more people are using that. I give credit to Rick Wiles, man. He's been out there saying exactly what needed to be said a very long time. And they do it to themselves because the hypocrisy is just blatant. Like that whole mess that people have been talking about with, what's her name? Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro, where Ben Shapiro called Candace Owens out for making an America First argument and said, hey, you guys, aren't you making the same arguments you made against the white people who've been attacked for months and months and months and years? And of course, he attacked her, because why wouldn't he? He's an evil troll. But anyway, another miserable thing to watch. But it is something out there to keep an eye on. Getting a better understanding of the Middle East, something I'm working on. I have a book on the Palestinians coming by a guy named Rashidi that might be interesting to look at. Because, it's actually, this was the point I wanted to get to, because I said this on Twitter, but I don't think people understood the import of it. We are dealing with a war. If America ultimately goes to war for Israel, and Israel gets into a Middle East broader war where they literally unite the Arabs based on what would happen if a full-on war happens in Lebanon, which might happen with them running raids on hospitals. I've seen some of the videos. They're terrible, and you cannot explain them away. You can try. You could say that there's every terrorist known there, but if you watch a kid with no limbs, which I literally did, crying out from a mouth that's not there, that sounds like almost like one of my birds. It was troubling, to say the least. How are you not going to feel, about that? And realistically, these people have been living in a prison camp. They're trying to escape. What a surprise. You did this to them. You go around complaining how you were in these camps, getting deloused. And at the same time, you're going to go around and say, well, it's okay that we did this to them for 50 years because they're Amalek. It's a religious war. It's a religious war, and it's a religious war against people who basically have two ideas. Either you're the enemy, Amalek, or you're the cattle, Goyim. And those are the words. And you know what? I'm so tempted to write the book on this. Maybe once I'm in Argentina, or if someone wants to write me a check if you want to write me a 6-figure check, I'll write the book that should be written, because that'll be the end of my career, but I could do it. I've got the track record, right? But what I'm saying is that it is a holy war, but my bigger animus today, and what I've been talking to Dana about, is it's about the Christians in this country, the right-wing Zionists, and they are committing a heretical act, arguing that Jesus is not enough and that there's an alternate way to heaven, right? And this heresy, people are like, oh, what does religious doctrine matter? Who cares? Who even believes in God anymore? Well, because these people have a heretical view based on a misunderstood line, I think it's Genesis 12 in there, where they're saying, he who blesses Israel will be blessed and he who curses Israel will be cursed. And this rapture theology that Schofield and Darby and all those people work to put in, what ends up happening is they literally believe that it's their job to either A, make prophecy happen, or B, to basically say the Jews get a free ethnic pass to heaven. And I know people who think this way, have family members who think, well, in-laws anyway, who think this way. And it's crazy, and it's wrong. It's biblically wrong. It directly contradicts the word of Christ. In fact, it actually puts the people who push it in peril. If you're a Christian, and you can follow my argument, which I watched on a show, what was it called? I think it was called like comparative theology or something. Some real kind of bland name. But the point was actually quite good. It's that, well, if your job as a Christian is to try to help lead people to salvation, you never want to speak a path that leads people away from salvation. And positing that there's an alternate salvation for people who not only don't deny, or who deny Christ, but also who are responsible for ultimately his demise, is something that's absolutely crazy. And you need to really think about that very carefully. If that's something you would want to support. Because if they didn't support that, then they'd look at this affair sidely and say, okay, where are the Christians in this? I'll give you a hint. There's a lot more Christians in Palestine than Israel, where they've made it a crime to proselytize. This is true. And where they're constantly looking to put greater penalties, and where Christian missionaries get spit upon. Whereas people who live in Palestine, they suffer along with the Arabs, with the Muslims, same as the Copts do in Egypt. And pound for pound, when you start to really look at it, I'm not here to endorse Islam, but I will say this. Islam, in a lot of ways, didn't do nearly the harm to Christianity that Judaism has done. In fact, I'll say it straight up. It's straight up. Zionism has done more harm to Christianity in what it has done to Europe in the last 100 years, as well as North America, than Islam managed in all of the jihad and crusades combined. And that's a problem. And the reason why is it's the propagandizement of bad theology. And much like the 30 Years' War got us into things, much like the Brothers' Wars, with the ethnic angle that we got led into, that you read Pike and others supposedly hinting at Masonic stories. Any of these paths you choose to take, you still draw the same, or just look at the names of the people who sell it. Let's say you don't believe in anything but what's right in front of you, that's blatantly overt, you end up in the same sort of conclusions, that these brother wars keep getting manipulated against, people who get Christians against Christians, European folks against European folks. And we keep falling for it, and they're falling for it again. And it's interesting. You see the governments, not just here, because it's even more blatant in Europe, where, there you would think because of the large amounts of Muslims they've imported, the Algerians in France, the Pakistanis and various, ethnic groups of the old British Empire, the Turks in Germany, that, they'd be a little more careful. But no, the governments are 100% all in behind Israel. And the reason why is, who owns them? I mean, the tail wags the dog. The bankers run the show. And, remember where they came out of, by the way. Zionism, World Zionist Congress. You know where it was? The first one, 1897? Switzerland. Basel, Switzerland. Switzerland. Again. CERN, Switzerland. What are they doing in those mountains? The Priory of Sion. Weird stories up there. And that's where the banks are. That's where the banker banks are. The Bank of International Settlements. So that's where the story's got to go if you follow it to the old Habsburg domains that were left to be they get to be neutral from every war, making money on all sides. So like the banks established a state of their own, and said, hey, don't look at us, we're a little hospital. Just invert the colors on a cross. Templar cross. Interesting. People don't want to believe that. But that's what the world comes down to, It's like I said on my sermon on Sunday, which a few of you watched, and thank you for those who did. Where you put your faith matters, and we live in a world of bad faith. We have absolute faith in terrible actors' outcomes and actually posited theories, which are just basically, how should I say, they're placeholders that only really have status as a sort of egregore, This is kind of a big idea. There's a little bit of this old schizo stream throwback for you. The way you believe in a thing determines how it will function. You'll never see a brick wall fly. You might see a single brick fly through the air. If you start applying different sorts of logics to things, you'd be surprised where your identification of what can happen goes to. It can become surprisingly different than what you would expect. And it's a curious and interesting thing. It's worth studying because, if you start to study the people who are fighting, people think intelligence is like a James Bond movie. No, it isn't. It's a bunch of geeks and a bunch of guys with guns who kind of talk to each other a little bit and try to figure out the rules of reality. And it turns out the psychologists, the occultists, the mystics, all of them, they kind of look at the same thing, and what they've realized pretty quick is you can reprogram people. And the question is, can you reprogram yourself, or will you let other people reprogram you? And once you start realizing that, then you start asking the question, well, what's real in this world? And what you realize is what you worship and what you believe is real. You want Jesus to be real? Believe in Jesus, and you'll find him involved in your life. And I'm not saying Jesus doesn't exist independently. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying that the fervency with which you believe plays a big role in the reality in which you reside and how you can pull yourself closer. If you find you're too far fallen, fix the only thing you can, yourself. And I know that's crazy, and it's hard for people to understand because we live in a world of dead objects that we think we manipulate, and we treat ourselves as dead objects or waiting to die within that. And it's a sad way to live that fits the time of technology where we want to turn ourselves into objects to live forevermore, not realizing that's the ultimate death sentence, that there's something eternal, there's something spiritual in us, there's a soul waiting to be released. And I think if there is some hope for the future, it's that more people realize that we can see our humanity across certain things and realize that a few people do a lot of damage and most people want to be left alone. And a few people like us have to get involved and say things and do things, and we'll see where it goes. Hopefully, the inertia that is made by everyone stopping because something doesn't feel right will be enough to make a big difference. It's certainly enough to kind of, I don't want to say arrest the fall, but it's kind of like we're like an avalanche tumbling down a hill with a pair of brakes on it, and we're slamming on the brakes, which isn't really slowing us down, but it's kind of making us jostle a little bit, so maybe the fall will be more manageable. Because like I was telling my wife, we were talking to people about these things, something I'm sure all of you experience, and people, unless you're very fortunate to have a community apart, or perhaps maybe a church is particularly aware, accepting your online friends, if you have interactions in the real world, real day-to-day ones, you'll find most people are just blue-pilled as hell. They don't know what's going on. They don't want to know. They don't want more disruptions than they have to deal with. And they're pretending harder that things were the way they were as things get worse. And they do that even though they can't buy as much, or they'll spend more, or they'll get deeper into debt because the fantasy is better than the horrible reality. I mean, we've been living in impoverished reality forever. Being back in the car, cold, remote reminds me of days where my happy thought was a warm bath. And I'm grateful that I can have that anytime I want. It's funny, I don't want it nearly as much now that I can have it. And maybe that's another comment on the human condition. But you talk to people about the truths that you find or the things that are happening, and they don't want to hear it, and they're not going to want to hear it, and they're not going to want to act on it. And then you're like, am I responsible? And this is the hard thing. I feel like you're knowledgeable. You feel guilt for the people you can't persuade, but the fact is you can't persuade them because they don't want to be. And that's why you have to learn to accept free will for yourself, for others, and take accountability. Because no one's going to do it for you. I mean, no one's going to care. I wish they cared. You know, I just had my birthday a couple days ago, which I didn't tell anyone about. And I wanted to see how many people would know and remember. I don't blame anyone in this audience. How would you know? I never told you. But if I didn't leave it on Facebook and I didn't leave it in places easy to get to, nobody remembered. And it parallels things I dealt with earlier in my life when my mother passed away. You know, people don't remember things. They don't remember things that are unpleasant, and they only interact with things that are positive because we are so saturated by, what would you say, not criteria, stimuli, that, you know, we need that now at this point. We feel like we're missing out if we don't have that. We're like a static ball. It's like wound up like this, and we want more stuff, and, you know, we do that, and we live and we structure our lives that way. We do that with technology, you know, and picking a book and just sitting there. I've had a couple days off and been able to go at a slow pace. I miss that. I miss time being able to think deeply instead of just, you know, touch on a little dot here and there and there. But, you know, here we do little quick bits just so that you have some things to think about. Not as news heavy today just because right now we're in a little bit of a lull. I do hope the lull continues through the holidays, but hey, there's a lot of troops forward deployed, treaties getting canceled all over the place, and, you know, the Middle East, even if things work out in Taiwan, and even if things slow down, or, you know, the Russians decide to finish what they want to finish over there in Ukraine, this Middle East problem isn't going away, and we are chained to the anchor that is Israel, and we should let them go, because they are the worst of the West, and they... You know, whatever they've done to incur the wraths of the Arabs, I mean, you got to look at it on the balance of it. And why are we involved? What do we gain? You know, I don't want anyone to get hurt. But ultimately, if it really comes down to it, you know, who are the bad guys? Well, I don't like being oppressed. I don't like the people who've been telling me for years what I can say and what I can't say, what I can think and what I can't think. And the same people who've been doing that are the ones who are saying, oh, now we're fighting for existential, you know, reasons, and that the civil rights for which, you know, we've been promised, freedom of speech. Yeah, well, cancel culture caught me a long time ago. Welcome to the club, Moshe. You know, it's where we are. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. I don't have a lot more to share with you guys. I do hope that all is going well, and I'll probably check in with you over the weekend. Like I said, if you want to say a quick prayer for Dana, otherwise, go check out the sermon I did on Sunday. It's actually quite good, and I kept myself under 25 minutes, which, you know, I'm trying to meet people's time preference a little better, and my own. I don't have, you know, an hour and a half to sit here and BS about problems. I mean, maybe if things get really funny. Other than that, just keep on working. I get to this last winter, and then in warmer shores next year, God willing. All right, love you guys. Venmo, CVC, PRV, P.O. Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. I will eventually get to putting something in the description once I post this. God bless each and every one of you. I am Tom Kaczynski. Goodbye.